Good morning, happy Wednesday, and Thursday. Thursday. Welcome to the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com. I'm Joe Cook, got Justin Wells. We'll have Ian Boyd joining us in just a second. And speaking of, Ian Boyd is joining us right now, live from the outskirts of Liberty Hill. Thank you for joining. We'll talk a little bit about what Ian posted on Inside Texas today. Obviously, Justin, you and I talked about grading the season last night, but there's more. Value of college football programs. Our Eric Naleen put something together from some Wall Street Journal data. And, of course, we got to talk about Junior Day upcoming. So, Ian, before we get into your thoughts on what Texas can learn from Ohio State, what grade would you give the Texas Longhorns 2024 season?
B plus.
Okay. That's lower than both of us. We went A.
Well, they lost the SEC championship and the national championship.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they an A.
So C would be like a passing grade, right?
They won 13 games for the second time in franchise and school history.
They
won 2 playoff games.
So better than passing, right?
I know Chris Del Conte has said that playing for national championships and being in the top 10 is what's expected, but I think we should also recognize that those are extremely sky-high expectations, worthy of more than just, yeah, you passed, here's a C.
Where does Texas rank amongst college football teams in payroll? Second, maybe?
No.
Top 8.
Top 10.
I think it's higher than that.
No. They didn't spend near as much as Tennessee and Ohio State.
Well, they lost to Ohio State, so that seems fair enough. I don't know. They had to me, a B is a great season.
No, I'm not disagreeing.
They had a national championship roster potential almost, and they couldn't do it. So, or win the SEC championship.
Fair enough.
If that's an A, then they didn't get that.
Well, my take on it has been, and I applied this with baseball, is like you only get an A plus for raising the title at Texas, especially in certain sports where those are the expectations. And I know Texas has only won 4 national championships, and they've only won 6 national titles in baseball. There we go. So there have not been a ton of A plus seasons around, but that's the air you breathe and the life you live. But a team that did have an A plus season is our buddy Tyler Currisley. Sorry if I butchered that, but thank you for watching. They were national champions, not world champions. But Ian, you wrote something about how Texas could learn a thing or two from Ohio State. And part of it has to do, I think you mentioned this in your article, with paying really good players to stay on your roster or to come to it. But it also has to do with some interesting schematic decisions on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah. By the way, I think Ohio State, I would give them like an A or an A minus because they lost to Michigan for the 4th time in a row. So that's not an ideal season. And that always, whenever this season gets stacked up to the great Ohio State seasons of yesterday,
right,
it's going to go down because they lost to Michigan.
So, yeah, you win a natty, but you still lose to the team up north. And so half of the fans in Columbus are like, well, we still got our butt kicked by a team that was barely 500.
Yeah, and they planted their flag.
Yeah, they planted their flag on the field to a team that was barely 500.
So, yeah, it's not an A plus.
Did Michigan make a bowl this year?
Yeah.
Oh, they did? Okay. Well, at least they can hang their hat on. They lost to a team that was barely 500 that made a bowl.
So the big breakthrough for them was that they had a quarterback that could run the ball, specifically in short yardage in the red zone. Because Will Howard is 6'4", 230, at least in weight. He's a little bit quick, and he didn't run the ball just a ton this year, but he had a lot of runs in enormous moments. It's like obviously 4th and 2 against Texas was a backbreaker.
Should have scored.
Should have scored, yeah, but he got the first down. Texas should have defended it better too, but that's the trouble when the other team has a 230-pound quarterback that can duck his head and go between the tackles.
That's 24 years old.
You can get – it's hard to fit that as easily. And then obviously against Notre Dame, they like controlled that game in the second half by just running Howard a bunch. He had like 16 carries in that one. So that was huge. For years, Ohio State has been a team with amazing wide receivers. And then it looks like they have an amazing run game. They'll have like 1,000 or 2,000-yard running backs. But then whenever they play teams with NFL-type personnel up front that stays back to defend the pass, mostly Michigan, but a few other teams as well, all of a sudden their run game is not there. And they can't control games because their run game is built so much on spacing and finesse. And that is the exact –
the fear of those receivers.
The fear of those receivers. And that is the exact same dynamic with Texas. Because Texas has, like Ohio State, Texas does a lot of their running by just tying teams up with the passing game. Texas has had receiving-oriented tight ends and not physical smash-you-in-the-mouth tight ends. And so when they run into teams like a Georgia or even Arizona State apparently, or definitely Ohio State, they can't run the ball anymore because they can't win the edge, and they don't have a quarterback they didn't have a quarterback that could even things out for them. So Ohio State had Will Howard, and even the decline in passing from a C.J. Stroud or Justin Fields or whoever to
Kyle McCord,
was made up for by his ability to help them run the ball in big spots. Texas needs that same dimension, and it's really obvious because red zone has been a killer, and they can't run the ball in big games for like 2 years now, at least.
One of the things that you mentioned, there are two things. So you're about to be talking for a little bit, but I'll go with the first one that I've always found really interesting, and it's been part of football probably for the past 20 years or so, at least in a way that, you know, since Rich Rod accidentally discovered the zone read, kind of throughout college football, is that you mentioned how the tight end either needs to block these guys or the quarterback needs to block these guys. How does the quarterback block, and how does the tight end skill set kind of correlate with that?
The tight end blocks by just actual literal blocking. That's really easy to understand. The quarterback blocks by reading a defender on the option or by turning the running back into a blocker. So if you run the option, then you can just leave a guy unblocked and the quarterback makes his decision based on what that guy does. Or even better, you direct snap it to the quarterback and he's not handing off at all. He's only running. And then the running back can either leave the box and make a linebacker go with him, so it's 5-on-5, or he can become a blocker, and then you have 6 blockers for 6 defenders again. Even if your tight end is flexed out or releasing because he's an athlete and he's not a tenacious blocker, it doesn't matter anymore. You just got that number back with the running back.
And nowadays, you know, you send that guy out of the box, the linebacker doesn't follow him, turns into an RPO. You throw that guy on a swing route, and you got 3 versus 2 out there too. So there's a lot that you can do, not just straight up running in the box.
The only thing with the RPO is that it's not as great in short yardage and red zone,
right?
Because you run out of space, and you'd rather be able to not have the defense choose for you to pass it. You want to be able to run it,
right?
So Quinn Ewers could block a defender with the RPO, but that had limited value when it's like we just need to run the ball here. Like Sark's always saying, we need to be able to run the ball when they know we're running.
I mean, and think of it. They throw 4th and short to Xavier Worthy on the goal line at Oklahoma. and then they run a toss pitch because they're trying to get outside. Like that's the issues are, you didn't have that quarterback who could block as much. Justin, when we try to think of, obviously now we're in the Arch Manning era, I think we've tried to run a lot of different comparisons to maybe who we think Arch could look like in this offense. And I think I've mentioned one a few times, and I have one pulled up. But I'm curious maybe if you can think of some quarterbacks of the past 10 years, not exactly that he's going to end up being first overall pick type player, but we always say this stylistically, how might you see Texas utilize Arch Manning?
I mean, this feels like more of an Ian question, but I mean, from somebody like me, they're going to go more vertical. They're going to go where Sark wanted to go with Ewers in his third year. They're going to go with more progressions. They're going to go with more weapons and more threats. Actually, I think you're going to see more passing, and that's saying that with 5 receivers potentially going in the NFL draft in the last 2 years from Austin. I mean, you're taking a big jump, but at the same time, that's Arch's MO. Now, there's going to be fans that think, well, he can run the ball because I've seen him go 21 miles an hour. Yeah, he's got that element to him, but that's not the basis of his foundation of his playmaking. It's sitting in that pocket. Arch is going to sit there as long as he needs to and go through his reads. Whereas Quinn would hit that check down. Nothing wrong with that. Hit that check down, get that 4 or 5 yards, live to play another play. Arch is, I don't know how much. I think Sark's going to have to get with Arch on hitting some of these check downs because he's going to see the slightest window in certain areas and he's going to chunk it. I mean, because honestly, what he does is he throws bombs. And so I think you're going to see some zone read, but I don't think you're going to see it as a staple because you don't want your potential first overall pick quarterback taking all those hits that a zone read quarterback is going to take. You do it to move chains. You do it to keep drives going. It does not, in my opinion, become like an instrumental part of the offense. I love the Arch packages last year. They could have done probably a little bit more with it than they did, and we can all admit that. But just looking at quarterbacks over the last 10 years, the good ones don't take a lot of shots in zone read. Not the ones that make it in the NFL for a long time. In college, if you're just a really good college quarterback like a Will Howard or Riley Leonard, you can do that. That's part of your MO anyway going into it. But Arch is so much more polished. And Sark, I really think, just wants to chunk the football 9 out of 10 times.
The one I've carried, and I'm about to pull it up, is, again, I'm not saying Arch is going to go become the first-round pick. First overall pick.
I'll say that for you.
But this is Trevor Lawrence's career stat log as far as rushing the football. And you can see his freshman. Well,
yeah, he scored 9 touchdowns his sophomore year.
His freshman year, when he was splitting time with Kelly Bryant until they finally made the switch. 11 yards a game, uptick to 37 yards a game. And then in this COVID season where they had some really high-level receivers, they always had high-level receivers, but some of these guys were, the T. Higgins, the Justin Rosses, that type of player, still getting 20 yards a game, still 8 touchdowns. You go to Will Howard, there we go, 7 touchdowns, albeit in 16 games, a little less than 20 yards a game, but still an option they weren't afraid to use, And again, one thing you have to remember is this is not adjusted for sack yardage. So anytime Will Howard was brought down behind in the backfield, that counts as a rushing attempt because the NCAA is archaic in that line of thinking. But you have seen, here's a national championship quarterback who no one thinks is going to be a first-round pick, providing a real threat of running the football. Here is, a Heisman runner-up, first overall pick, being a real threat and running the football and having that, I forget what year it is every time, but that long run through the heart of whatever defense it was, probably Ohio State's, I think, in 2018, maybe. Still, against the Buckeyes, who that changed the game. It's not saying you have to major in it. And, if you have skill talent like Najee Harris and Devontae Smith and, Jalen Waddle and Henry Ruggs around you, then you don't need the quarterback to run when you're, Mac Jones. But doesn't look like Texas had that over the past couple of years. And so that's why having Arch be able to run the football like that will provide a measure in the offense that Texas
It'll make defensive coordinators pay more attention. I just hope they don't become reliant on it. And I don't feel like they will. You know how Herman was so reliant on Sam Ehlinger doing a lot of that? And I don't think they will. I really don't. But that's my only trepidation is that, man, they get into it where they can't move it in the red zone or something, and all of a sudden he becomes a battering ram, and then I can just hear the call coming from the suite from Cooper. When did you turn my son into Mike Allstott? And then all of a sudden something gets changed. But I don't think Sark does that.
There's a lot of middle ground between Quinn running the ball like 30 times a year and Sam Ehlinger running it like 150 times a year. And I think Arch can be somewhere in that middle.
Okay.
And I know the family are like, we don't want to put hits on this kid and run tread off the tire. But it's going to be part of his sales pitch to the NFL at some point. That's like, I could be, Josh Allen light.
Oh,
I could be.
That's a stretch.
I mean, he's not even Josh Allen, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Like I can.
Josh is like a freaking.
I can pick up a first down with my legs on 3rd and 8 regularly.
Yeah. Josh Allen has more rushing touchdowns in Buffalo than Thurman Thomas. So it blows my mind to this day. But I like that. I like your comp there.
That's the thing now. Like that's what teams are looking for. I heard Mike Tomlin wants to draft Jalen Milroe. They definitely have a type now in Pittsburgh, right?
That would definitely fit the type. All run, no pass.
They're like, we're going to get
a girlfriend that won't shut up.
They wanted Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson, and they're going to not rest until they find him. So.
See, that's the thing to me. Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts aren't even in the same category, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but I do see where you were going with that. But man, I can't even. There's Jalen Hurts is not in the same conversation as Lamar Jackson. That's for another thing. But anyways,
yeah, he's not. Lamar Jackson is probably the greatest running quarterback we've ever seen.
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever. And his passing has incrementally got better every single season.
I don't know about that part. But
Jalen
Hurts adds those situational runs, obviously.
Yeah.
He can scramble. He can run zone read.
Yeah.
You just run it a couple times a game, and the other team has to think about it. It changes.
He opened the game against the Rams for the win.
They play your whole deal.
With a long down, just like you're talking about.
The tush push
is
one of the most important weapons we've ever seen. So
before we keep on going, I got to show some love to one of our sponsors. This one is Game Time. If you want to go to any of the championship games for the AFC or the NFC, I think the Pro Bowl is doing something. I think they got tickets for that. You want to go to basketball, hockey, hot ticket Saturday in Austin with Texas playing Texas A&M in basketball. You got to go to Game Time. Use the promo code ON3 and get $20 off your first purchase. You get to see what the view is like from your seat before you even put in any credit card info. And then also, when you put in your credit card info or debit card or PayPal, you know how much you're paying at the very moment you're putting that in. You're not going to be surprised by fees. So go to Game Time or go to gametime.co. Use the promo code ON3 and get $20 off your first purchase. Justin, what time is it?
My friend, it's game time.
All right. Before we keep going into, Ian, anything else you wanted to tie up from, what lessons to learn from Ohio State? Was there anything from the defensive side of the ball aside from go buy the best safety in college football and make sure that all your seniors stay?
I think Texas has already figured out all the same secrets. Like they brought back Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton. They'll do that anytime it makes sense for them and it makes sense for the player. I'm sure they'll find a way to pony up and get him to stay. I don't know if they can do that this year because they don't have those fringe NFL guys to bring back. So we'll see how that goes. But
I like Anonymous's comment here. I think that ties up what we were talking about, Arch. Run as much as Andrew Luck ran.
Yeah.
Not a conventional mobile guy, but really athletic, underratedly strong. And when he needed to, he could get you 3 or 4 yards without killing himself.
Yeah, Andrew Luck was killed by his offensive line, not by overrunning too much.
Exactly.
I
I like that, Anonymous. I think that was I think that's a good comparison.
I kind of think Ellinger incurred a lot of his injuries taking shots in the pocket more so than running as well. Because he didn't even take that many direct hits because he had such a good start-stop deal.
And feel for the pocket.
But he took some shots hanging in the pocket. And it all just added up,
With you there. Got to go to this question from our guy, Brett Nelson. Who gets drafted and in what round? We know that Texas – let's start with the early declarations because I have a list of them right here. Kelvin Banks.
That's your first pick. The first Longhorn off the board is Kelvin Banks. I expect him to go to the Chicago Bears with, I think, the 8th or 9th pick. He's going to be the new – because they need a blind side. They need 2 or 3 offensive linemen in Chicago. And if you're going to buy a Lamborghini, you better have a really nice insurance policy back as his blind side.
They just hired Ben Johnson from Detroit, right?
Yes.
Correct. Okay. So that makes sense to me too.
They're in.
They got so many. They've got a lot of good little offensive weapons that if they just need to retool that offensive line, if they want Caleb Williams to be the guy for the next 10 years,
go find a Penei Sewell.
Yeah.
It's kind of been seen, I think, as if Banks and Will Campbell are.
I've heard Campbell probably goes above him just by a couple people. I think Campbell might go up, but what we're going to see over the next 3 months of all these mock drafts that drive you absolutely crazy, they're going to go back and forth. You're going to see them go back and forth until about a week before the draft.
Do y'all buy the Kelvin Banks professional guard talk?
No.
Not really, but I saw Justin Blaylock do it. I think there's some similarities there, and he's not even as big as Blaylock was. So I think you're a tackle because that's the harder thing to find and more valuable. But if something happens within, say, the line and you have to shuffle and move around, I think Banks could slide in easily and wouldn't skip a beat.
Ian, you were pretty quick on it. I don't think so either, at least in the early parts of his career. Maybe down the line.
All right. No.
All right.
He's handled some of the best edge rushers in all of college football that are actually making their hay in the NFL right now. So I don't have a leg to stand on.
All right. What about Jaden Blue? Where do we think he's going? He seems like a late day.
6th.
7th,
maybe. Running backs just don't go early. When a run on them late happens, I think that's when you'll see Jaden Blue, but he's going to go through the interview process, and I think it'll be late.
Getting drafted, though, right?
He'll get drafted. He's too good in open space. He's unfair in open space.
All
and
right.
he's got great hands.
Isaiah Bond.
Beginning of the season, you could have made an argument early 2nd round. And Matthew Golden would probably have been in the 4th, 5th round talk, maybe with a good season. Those have flipped. Now Matthew Golden's going to be the guy that goes in the first 5 or 10 picks of the second day. And then I think Bond is going to interview. I don't think that's going to go well. He's going to run as fast as anybody or one of the faster guys. That's what's going to keep him in the conversation. But they're going to talk to people around college football about work ethic, about injuries, about a lot of other stuff, hands, route running, lack of blocking. And at some point, I think each place that's going to ding him. I'm thinking 4th or 5th round.
I think he'll – the thing – I remember last year with Xavier Worthy, it's like, oh, he's only, 5'10", 160. Like, what's he going to do? And then he rattled off the 4.21, which at this point in your career, when you have nothing but time, you can train every stride of the 40-yard dash in order to maximize it. And all these guys do that. But Bond is going to be special, I think, and may if he could, yeah, I'll say he could realistically break 4-3, and some GM is going to just okay, he broke 4-3.
They're gonna skip everything else that was negative about him, and they were gonna jump on that 4-3 to justify it. You're 100% right. They do it every draft.
So congratulations on your new career with the Las Vegas Raiders, Isaiah Bond. Quinn Ewers, where do we think he's going?
I think he is a mid to late second round pick. And again, I think it's going to be about when the second run of quarterbacks starts coming off the board. That could be earlier, which would push him up a little bit earlier. But you're going to have Cam Ward going to the Giants. You're going to have Shador going to the Raiders. Then there's going to be like a little window there of no quarterbacks. Then the next level of guys is going to start coming off the board. That to me is what do we have? Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, Will Howard,
Jalen Milroe. When the next run on quarterback starts, that could be the late first round, early second round. Quinn Ewers is going to be near the top of that second run.
I think what we've learned is that Quinn Ewers made the obviously correct decision in coming back for his junior year and leaving after it. Because if he had left after last year, he's 7th or 8th in line because of the run on quarterbacks that started that draft.
Which I think one reason he came back.
Right. And, looking at next year's draft, help me out here. Who's going to be draft eligible?
Oh, next year, Garrett Nussmeier. He's going to be weird.
Carson Beck.
Arch Manning.
No, 27's the Arch Manning, DJ Lagway 1 and 2. Arch has 2 more years in Texas and Austin.
He'll be eligible.
Somebody will rise up. That's kind of the point to make.
I mean, and there's a few that we're probably not thinking of. Nico might actually turn into a quarterback. His arm strength would get a lot of people's attention.
Cade Klubnik, Drew Aller.
Yeah. Drew Aller's going to be the Brock Purdy pick, except without the Brock Purdy success.
Speaking of Rocco Becht.
I would take Rocco Becht.
Oh, Sam Levitt.
Drew Aller.
Yeah. Levitt will be drafted.
Levitt could sneak in to be one of those, early second day pick kind of guys. Maybe sneak into the back of the first round.
Yeah, for sure.
Then,
You're right.
Mateer, right? Wouldn't he? I don't have great expectations, but
Mateer's like a Will Howard type.
Yeah. And then Avery Johnson too. Like we have names. We're figuring out names.
Yeah.
27 is going to be the year that really. Because you're looking at what? Arch, DJ Lagway, Jeremiah Smith. Like the top 5 there is going to be like 2006 when it was Reggie Bush and Mario Williams and Vince Young and those guys. Like 2027's NFL draft is going to be must see.
Moving on down. Again, we're doing the early declarations. We'll go through the seniors in a second. Matthew Golden could be first, y'all think?
I think he's going to be mocked into a bunch of first rounds, and then they're going to chip away at him. Then they're going to cut him, and then they're going to build him back up. You know how they do it in that mock draft cycle. And I think he winds up going pretty early in the second round. He's going to test really well just from speed. We know how fast this kid was. We remember that in high school. Unbelievable hands. And then he's going to interview really, really well. Matthew Golden's going to be – he reminds me of Donnie Avery, an old wide receiver from the University of Houston. He was the first wide receiver picked in his draft by the Rams. Just speed, just hands. I think that's Golden. Early, mid-second round. He's the one that made some money this year.
Last one, at least from the underclassmen, is Cam Williams.
Second?
Or late first.
Yeah, maybe.
It just depends. How his weight is going to be a factor. He's only started 1 year, is going to be a factor. He led FBS in penalties on the offensive line. That's going to be a factor. But my goodness, if you saw what Cam Williams looked like 2 years ago to now, and if you can see the projection of what he could continue to look like, it's going to be hard for him to get passed up in the late first round.
Those draftniks are going to find clips of him reaching linebackers from the backside on outside zone. And they're going to be like, look, this guy is an absolute freak. They just don't, God doesn't make people that are this big that move like this, but one or two a year, you know? And so he'll go higher than his tape would suggest he should, for sure. And
He's a human Shrek.
He could play early at guard because he is powerful.
I hope we get
and he's working hard. Like, the guy has trimmed down. The guy came in at almost 400 pounds. He looks fantastic, and he is very underrated athletically. I've seen this cat at his biggest dunk of basketball. Yeah. That stuff right there, they're going to eat. The NFL personnel is going to eat that up.
I hope when he palmed the helmet.
Yeah.
Yes. He is a human version of Shrek.
I hope we get to tell some of that story, because Cam Williams was not somebody regularly made available to us in the media, whether it be post game or, on the normal Mondays where they make players available.
He's not a big talker.
We rarely got to talk to him. I know, but they've brought out not big talkers before who flourished. And hey, man, you're gonna have to learn how to do it if you want to play in the NFL.
Cam is more quiet. I like that because Cam is. I think he's. If you really get to know, I was lucky enough to be around him a lot during this recruitment. He's a big softy. Like he looks like this big monster, but he's really sweet. He really is, and I think that's going to be endearing to some of these schools.
Before we go to the seniors, let's hear from our other sponsor, Andre the Lawyer.
This video is brought to you by Andre the Lawyer. If you're injured, trust the team that secured millions for their clients and helped thousands of Texans with their injury case. Car wrecks, slip and falls, 18-wheeler accidents, on-the-job injuries, and wrongful deaths. Don't let insurance tell you what your claim is worth. Hire Andre the Lawyer to fight for you. Principal office is in Dallas, but they serve Texans throughout the state. So don't wait and call Andre the Lawyer today at 214-444-8808. That's 214-444-8808. The contact information is in the description.
Thank you, LC. Thank you, Andre. Now let's go through with the seniors. Going in number order here. Andrew Makuba.
I don't know. I don't know the safety market that well.
Yeah, probably like the fourth to sixth.
That's what I think too.
Yeah, I would say early, mid, third day. He's gonna his interviews are going to be fabulous. I just don't know how he's going to test. That's one we're going to watch.
I think in the too high world that we live in the NFL nowadays, he's going to be someone that really is valued because of his coverage skills. Yeah. And even at, he's kind of slender for the position. Even at his size, he would come down and hit you. So I think
he got run over a couple times though when he tried to do that on bigger guys.
Yeah.
But I like that he'll throw his hat in there and not flinch.
Need to gang tackle when Derrick Henry's coming downhill.
And our man AR's got a good point. The NFL, it's kind of like with running backs. They don't value safeties like they do some of the other spots, and that's always going to knock you down a round or two.
They do only if it's like Earl Thomas, Kyle Hamilton, guys like that. Where it's
the future Hall of Famers. Yeah,
the dudes that are like weapons on the field and not just. I think Makuba has built himself up into a typical, like, replacement level NFL kind of safety.
So. And one of the things that we can kind of mention about all these guys is, at the very worst, for most of these guys, they have a home on spots 33 through 53 on the roster playing special teams. At the very worst. But a guy who's going to be in the top 25 of any roster, Jahdae Barron, where do y'all think he ends up getting drafted after his season?
Matt Miller has been beating his drum for a good 6 months, which, it was the drum that we broke for the last 3 years. He's talking about him jumping up into the late first, early second. I think this one's tough because personally, we think Barron can get to the NFL and play at 3 different levels, which I think makes him incredibly valuable. I just don't know how he's going to test.
Yeah.
He's not the fastest guy. He's not going to be your strongest guy. He's not going to be your quickest guy. But my God, once they climb into his head and they understand just how he baits people, how he understands the defensive and the schemes, playing 3 different levels has just put him, I think, in a whole other category. That's the one I'm so curious, because I could see maybe a second-day pick, and I could see that guy sliding to the 3rd because he's not that tall, he's not that big, and he's not that fast.
He might be the next Tyrann Mathieu or Devin McCourty, where it's like we don't quite love him in man coverage in the NFL, but he's, for a safety, he's so smart and he's plenty athletic for a safety. So we're just going to move him inside and turn him into a stud. I think that's like one of his worst. If he doesn't crack it at corner, he might be an all-time great safety.
Yeah. And actually, I think in the NFL, safety might be a better spot.
Andre Diggs.
Yeah.
Similar. Yeah, very similar. That's a good comparison. Yeah.
See what he runs.
I looked up, and I realized right away after I looked it up, because of how much cover 3 Texas played, Richard Sherman. But then I realized that they're not very comparable. Richard Sherman's
like 6'2 and a half, 6'3.
Yeah. Barron may barely be 6 feet tall. And then go ahead.
I said, I remember meeting Richard Sherman. Remember, I got to meet him when he was training Holton Hill. And because he loved Holton's, and he was sitting there working with his feet and everything. And I just remember thinking, Richard Sherman looks like a wide receiver. Man, he was tall. And you talk about him and Barron are actually similar when it comes up here. Incredibly intelligent players.
I wonder
they should maybe move to safety.
The right franchise will move him to the right spot, I feel.
I wonder what type of quickness times Barron puts down. That's going to be
subtle.
Yeah.
He's going to train hard.
Yeah.
If he trains hard as much as he works hard, he's going to get some of those drills down, and I think that'll also help his stock. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if he's early day 2 pick, mid day 2 pick. I just think they're going to start dinging him they're going to look for a lot of things before they put him in that category.
All right. Thumbs up and thumbs down on these next 2. And for our podcast folks, got to vocalize it. Gavin Holmes. Thumbs down from Justin.
I'm being drafted at all?
Yes.
He'll be signed as a rookie free agent. I don't think he's going to get drafted.
I think he might, because he might run like a 4.3 or something.
That's true.
I'll go he won't.
That's true.
Silas Bolden.
Oh, God. If he wasn't 135 pounds, like he's going to run you know how fast that joker's going to run. And is he receiver or is he a special teams guy that can also play receiver? Oh, man, I don't know with Silas. I think there's a place in the NFL for Silas Bolden. I just don't know where it's at right now.
I don't think it's worth a draft pick.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Bill Norton.
He's getting drafted. It may be the 7th round. Big boys that are active on the defensive line, they don't go undrafted. Usually.
He might go 7th. He's like strictly a first down only. He was like a first down only guy in college. So
he got a lot better in the second half of the season, though, too, Ian. He became more.
When it gets colder.
That's what I said last night on the show. Exactly. I said, man, the colder it got, the better Bill Norton got. If he goes up to the NFC Central, the Bears, the Packers, the Vikings, Bill Norton might be a fan favorite.
The North.
The North.
He has a shot to be drafted, I think.
Where's our boy Tyler? We're trying to talk about going that school up north, but nobody from Columbus wants to hear about that.
What about David Benda?
No, he's not getting drafted.
No.
I agree. Mo Blackwell, no. Vernon Broughton. I think he'll get a pick.
Blackwell is going to get a cup of coffee in the league as a special teams gunner, similar to what Chris Boyd and Keaton Crawford are kind of on the path of. I really do. Also, Josh Thompson. Josh Thompson's still in the NFL just because of what he does on special teams.
I don't think Mo Blackwell is near the athlete those guys are.
I don't think he's near as fast as those guys are, but he is certainly twitchy and he's certainly rangy with his frame. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking Mo. I just know that there's something there.
There are Mo Blackwells
at every
other rosters who are faster and twitchier.
You're right.
Vernon Broughton. I think this will be
he's getting drafted.
Where? I think 6 or 7.
I would think 4 or 5.
Yeah, it's going to be a little higher. He won't go before Collins, but he will go before Norton. He's going to be in the middle.
He might go.
I'll compromise. He'll be in the 5th. He had a great year. He had a year that's worth putting tape out. And the thing he needs, I think, is just to build up his upper body. I felt like he is the same size from chest and arms that he was when he arrived. The only thing that got bigger was his waist and his butt. But he was just much more active in his senior year. I think that's enough to go in the 5th, 6th round. He's getting picked. I've
talked to a scout that said he's better than Alfred Collins, just on a down-to-down basis, and he'll go
more consistent. I'll give you more consistent.
I don't understand what this person is talking about. Benda equals Sam Acho. First of all, do you mean Manny Acho?
Yeah, it has to be Manny Acho. But
Sam is a really good TV analyst. Sam is good at his
Clemson to win the national championship. Sam is tolerable because of how bad Emmanuel is. And Sam's a good guy. We've talked to Sam before at media days. I like Sam. He's a great guy. But it makes him look even better than he really is, because when you compare him to his brother, it's like comparing Jesus to the devil.
I'll tell you this. As football players, Benda cannot touch either Acho brother. Those guys were college stars. Yeah. College stars. Either of them would start on the vast majority of historical Texas teams.
I was shocked that a football helmet in the NFL would fit on Emmanuel Acho's head. I mean, that just shocks me that they make them that size, because the more every word in the head just gets so big.
I think comparing Benda to having Sam is like on studio shows for ESPN. Benda would do pretty well at that. Keep moving on. Jake Majors. He's going to be one of the better centers in this draft, I feel like.
Yeah. He gets drafted late. It's just according to how long. Can he be a Lyle Sinline? Can he be a guy in the NFL for 5 or 6 years, started for the Arizona Cardinals for years at center? Can he kind of slide into that? I mean, he's 26, 27 years old. I think there's a spot there. I really do. I just don't know how long because of his size.
I think that's going to be his biggest ding, his size. But he'll test really well on quickness and speed for O linemen, for as much as that's worth. Hayden Connor, thumbs up, thumbs down?
He might as a center.
His future's in aerodynamics.
He's still a 3-year starter.
I think he may go 7th or UDFA for a little bit.
I see UDFA. Juan Davis. I'm sorry, I don't see it for him.
You know what though? Juan's kind of sneaky because he's pretty athletic. He won't get drafted, but he's going to get a cup of coffee. He's going to get an invite to one of those NFL camps.
I bet we could see Juan Davis playing in one of the other pro football leagues and doing all right. All right, here's a good one. Gunnar Helm.
Yeah.
But where?
4th.
Yeah.
I think 4th. Yeah. Depends on the run of tight ends. I know I say that a lot, but it really does matter. And I'm not real sure who the other tight ends are in this cycle outside of Tyler Warren. I think that'll be the first tight end picked. 3rd or 4th round. That man went from undrafted 12 months ago to potentially the 3rd or 4th round. He's going to test pretty well. I don't know how well he's going to run, but he is going to interview well. He is going to catch everything that's thrown at him. And NFL, I think, values guys that kind of went through the 4 or 5 years of college and really got better and developed and got stronger. And now they're not drafting some project at 21. They're drafted a guy that's a little more polished and developed at 23.
What about Baron Sorrell?
Man, there's a place in the NFL for Baron Sorrell. I just don't know where.
7th.
You
He's
think it's
another
that
like
big?
he's like Makuba, that he's like a replacement level defensive end in the NFL.
I wonder if he could play heavier than the 260 he's listed at.
He looks so much bigger than
Maybe.
260, Joe.
We'll see
And I
what he
wonder-
weighs in at.
Every year I saw Baron Sorrell up front, I thought he was bigger than the year before.
What if he drops to like 240 or not 240, like 250 and plays on the weak side?
No.
No, he'd get pushed
Not
around.
Yeah. Okay.
He's not it's not like he's an explosive freak who's been held back by Texas putting weight on him.
Yeah.
He needs to get bigger, if anything.
All right. And then last but not least, because I'm gonna skip Jermaine Lole, Alfred Collins.
Second or third, I think.
I think late second. He's one of those guys that you just have to draft, like Cam Williams. You just have to draft on the potential of what he could be. And he did have a really good senior year, probably the contract year that he needed. They might ding him for not playing consistently over the last few years. I think that might hold him back a little bit. But his size, his speed, his testing, his interviews are going to be tremendous. I think if he was meaner, he might go a little bit higher. So they're going to try to pull out some of that animal that he's got in him. But I'd say late second, no further than early first day third day, first round of the third day.
It's an interesting point. What would we have said 4 years ago based on projection and potential of
First round pick? We all thought that.
4 years ago, we're looking at that Colorado game. 5 years ago, he's coming out of high school, and you're like, wow, this is an unbelievable athlete at a school that does not make very many unbelievable athletes, who's got to learn the position. Remember, they had him playing tight end, and he did, but then he had to learn effort, and he did. So he's a good developmental story. It did take 5 years, and I wonder if teams ding him for that, but they're drafting. You're still drafting a guy who's 6'5", pushing 330. And can move like he does.
He showed some flashes this year, a little bit more than in the past. I think he'll be rewarded.
Brett, thank you for that question. We got a lot of mileage out of that. We'll do that more and more over the course of the spring when more and more mocks come out and more drafts and combine stuff happens. This will be Ian. Do you want to take this one? Does anybody want to take this one?
He can throw the ball, guys.
I haven't seen a ton of him. His tendency to take sacks and hold the ball forever is no bueno. You play the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're on you, and you got to either get away or get the ball out. So, he'll go high because he's one of the more promising quarterbacks, and some bad, dumb team will sell themselves on him. But I don't know. He needs, like somebody just mentioned, Sean Payton. He needs to end up with someone like Sean Payton that teaches him how to get the freaking ball out.
And he's got a live arm. Like I think he can make a lot of those NFL throws. He can get the ball down the field really well. The problem I think with Shedeur is going to be: are you using a first round pick on a quarterback that's not going to be a leader in your locker room? And that is why he's going to go to the Raiders.
He has the L patch. I think he's.
What's the L patch?
Leader.
Because he's the highest ranked Sanders' son right now. That's why he gets the L patch.
No, Travis is the highest ranked Sanders' son.
Okay, see, I thought Shedeur, then Travis, then Deion Jr., and then Shiloh's is still at the bottom. Shiloh can't even swim. He's barely above water, and all I see is Deion continually. I'm making him better. I'm pushing my son. Yeah, you're pushing him to drown him.
If you watching Colorado this year was a little bit more refreshing than last year because they overhyped a 5-7 team or a 4-8 team just because of Deion factor. And then they show up this year and play good football. They have the Heisman winner, and a lot of it had to do with Shedeur playing pretty well.
It did.
So I think I also know that the NFL is still susceptible to hype, but
Yes,
they're not
especially
making.
at quarterback.
But I don't think they're making. I think actually, Sugar Daddy, this is a really good comment.
That's a perfect comp for a guy in the locker room. He has got Caleb Williams type of cuckoo, like
But
that's the same guy.
On field, they do a lot of similar things. I think Caleb is way more talented throwing the
Oh
football.
yeah, Caleb's a lot more talented.
But they do a lot of like, I can extend this play because I'm superhuman on the field, and that works in the big. That worked in the SWAC, and it even worked in the Big 12 once Dion got the O line together. But it's not going to, like Ian, like you mentioned, not exactly going to work in the NFL. Fun fact: Shedeur Sanders, born in Tyler. So Justin,
Here's one thing on
Dion has a home in Edom, which is about 20 minutes from here. Yep.
Here's one thing on Sanders though, and the Raiders.
That one.
The Raiders have Tom Brady in ownership now.
And he's already made some bad decisions.
Yeah, but I don't know if he's going to – Tom Brady doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would draft Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward.
Cam Ward's going to be the first quarterback pick. The Giants have that's who they want. And they're going – and that's a guy that's going to get picked apart throughout this process. You're going to see him be, he should be the first pick. And then you're going to see him, well, maybe he's more mid because he's shorter. But yeah, Cam Ward, these two are going to get picked apart. Here, and I've said this before, and I'm going to say it one more time. I'm going to put this on a shirt. Every single quarterback drafted in 2025 is going to be a reach.
I think that's fair. I do wonder how much say do they want to give Tom Brady? Like, on one hand,
if I'm going to draft a quarterback, I would give him a lot of say.
I know, but you have Mark Davis, who you have a new GM who I know Brady kind of selected.
Fired the one that just had a once-in-a-decade draft.
And Tom Brady, like I said, on one hand, he's Tom Brady. On the other hand, he only has a 5% ownership stake.
Are we thinking like a Michael Jordan ownership with Charlotte? Because we saw how good Michael Jordan drafts.
Yeah,
right.
Not good. Just because you're really good on the field, just because you're the greatest on the field, does not mean you're the greatest in the front office. And Tom Brady remains to be seen.
But Jordan had a majority stake.
Okay. But, I mean, still, they bring in a clout in that organization of, hey, I've seen that. I've seen this. I know how to identify stuff. And who wouldn't trust Tom Brady in that regard?
That's the thing.
I almost feel like it's over his head. Like, there's other guys there that are actually more at stake, more involved, and will probably make more of those decisions. And Brady's more of feeding them, his info or his piece.
Hypothetically, if they took, let's say he thinks Cam Ward is a loser, and then they take Cam Ward, you are in deep waters if Tom Brady comes out in the media and says, I told them not to take Cam Ward, and then he busts.
Tom Brady, I don't think would come out and do that.
He's got a mic in his face for 4 hours every Sunday.
That's a dereliction of duty. You weren't hired there to trash the organization you just drafted a guy by. He's not going to do that.
He's got a mic in his face for 4 hours. Who knows what he might say?
Sometimes I think he's going to eat that mic when he's doing it on NFL Sundays.
Here's another factor before we'll swing this back to Texas football in just a second. The Raiders don't have a head coach.
Yeah.
No, they'll get that before the draft days.
Actually, I don't be shocked if Dion is the prime candidate there.
Yeah, that's another one.
I know it doesn't make any. I know you think Tom Brady's going to bring in that circus. Deion Sanders has never coached a football team where his son wasn't the quarterback.
Yeah, I wonder if I honestly, and I know this is going to come as a shock, I believe Dion when he says he prefers college. Because the whole
prefers Dion.
Because the whole I'm Coach Prime thing, it's not going to work on the 33-year-old right guard who needs another contract.
Julian Lewis has no idea what having no offensive line feels like.
Here's a good tell that shows that Joe might be right. Just that when a coach at a top place leaves, it's usually you don't know about it until it happens. when you hear about it all the time before it happens, that means he's angling for something.
Yeah.
So like the more you hear about like Sark going everywhere, the more it's like that's probably a good sign because his agent is letting it float out there for a reason. Maybe get a little more NIL investment, maybe get that extension he got. Deion Sanders doing that makes me think he's trying to squeeze Colorado for probably more NIL.
I believe that, Ian. I just don't think there's a whole lot. It's hard to get a lot of blood out of a turnip. Like, I don't think there's a lot to squeeze.
Yeah, well, maybe
unless they start dumping into the NIL dispensary market of Colorado, I don't think it's gonna help.
Maybe he's trying to get him to take on private capital investment.
And hey, that's where a lot of this I think is going.
Oh boy.
Who's been real quiet is Ryan Day.
He didn't have to say anything. Are you talking about the NFL?
Why not?
Yeah.
How can you get a job in the NFL when you were born on third and you scored a national championship on a pass ball?
Because you can still call really good offense.
Chip Kelly didn't call that offense. That was Ryan Day.
I think it was Ryan Day.
But
Ryan Day still has 5 and
I think he grabbed the call sheet after the Michigan loss.
Hey, I'm gonna tell you something. There's only one school in this country that is more afraid of Ryan Day going to the NFL, and that's Notre Dame. Because the only place Marcus Freeman's going to leave South Bend for is Columbus.
He'll probably just stay, I figure.
I thought that too.
I don't know what
Notre Dame brass don't. They're a little itchy about that.
That would be the greatest revenge for Ryan Day. Would be you finally win the national championship after everyone's calling for your head the entire playoffs.
Yeah,
and then you leave for an NFL job when Mike Vrabel is already locked in somewhere and all these other coaching candidates are already locked in somewhere. And now everyone can poach your roster like crazy. And then just, how do you like me now? Good luck.
Hey, that'd probably be the only way I would like Ryan Day is if you did that.
That'd be pretty savage.
If our good friend Kirk Bowles wrote a column saying like, "Hey Dallas, if you're looking for a head coach, call Columbus." So
yeah,
they're
not gonna do that though.
I can't believe they still let him type on a typewriter.
Oh man, couple good questions before we get out here. Helio, sorry for letting this one go so long, but had to go through the draft process.
Ian's got this one.
Do you think Texas will go with more 21 personnel with inexperience at tight end next year?
More than this year. I guess that makes sense. They got a gazillion running backs that'll all be trying to vie for a spot. You got Trey Wisner, super flexible, so he could play next to anybody. I think you'll probably see more 11 though, especially with the thing I mentioned earlier. Arch can run the ball some, so that makes it a lot easier to run from 11 personnel. Part of the reason Texas plays so much 12 personnel is that you have a hat on everybody up front without having to ask anything of the quarterback. Also, probably Sark loves 12 personnel so much. He'll play like Spencer Shannon and Jordan Washington together, or he'll move like Ogbo or Chapman to jumbo tight end or something. He'll do something.
I don't see the reason to take a wide receiver off the field next year in this personnel package,
as long as it's the right wide receivers.
Like you're probably next year looking at what you got: Ryan Wingo and DeAndre Moore,
and then
who's your third? Okay, I can.
Third's going to come out in the spring. We're going to figure out who the third is.
I can be sold on more 12 than I could 21.
And it is what it is. Actually, has a good little question. I haven't heard any rumblings about Carnell Tate, but if he was to hit the portal, I do think Texas would kick those tires.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I could see Ohio State actually making a push to keep him because they're going to lose more than Michigan lost last year. And so retention just to stay above water, I think, is going to be instrumental for those guys. Julian Sayan's going to need a veteran to throw the ball to, and he'll have Jeremiah. Well, he'll have him, but I'm just saying, Carnell, I wouldn't be surprised if the Buckeyes tried to keep him there.
It's a good one from Ryan Nelson. Higher upside, Khalil Lockett or Jamie French?
I'll let y'all go first because I know the answer.
I haven't seen enough of French recently, but I'm starting to lean more towards guys that catch the ball out of the air when people are around him. And that'd be Lockett, right? French may be good at that too, but Lockett is a magnet.
These guys are receivers more than they're athletes, but they're still really, really athletic receivers. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that they're, just sprinters who catch footballs like John Burt ended up being. And I know John Burt had some good success at Texas. But these guys have some, the soft skills, the route running. But Lockett's also 6'3", and French is 6'1", but Lockett's a little bit bigger, and I think can do they both have high upsides, but I think Lockett may be able to just leverage his skills a little bit better than French down the line. That's not to say French is going to have a bad career at all.
Right. Khalil Lockett is the answer, and the reason is because he has almost 11-inch hands. That's the same size hands as Kevin McHale, the Hall of Fame power forward for the Boston Celtics. Now I know why he never drops a ball. And Ian nailed it. Lockett will go up in traffic and catch it. If there's one thing that I think Wingo's going to have to work on in this spring as taking on more of a role to be an impactful guy, it's fighting through that stuff, because he gets held on a daily basis. And guess what? You're not going to get those calls sometimes. He's got to learn how to fight through contact. I feel like Lockett's going to be able to do that early. They're expecting Lockett to play as a true freshman. And like you said, 6'3", these aren't athletes playing receiver. These are wide receivers. Dalen McCutcheon's the same way. He's a DeAndre Moore 2.0. And don't sleep on Parker Livingstone. 6'4". The kid keeps growing. He runs like a giraffe. And Sark and Jackson absolutely love that guy.
I think we had a lot of people.
David Williams even forgot him. There, Parker. There we go. He's at the bottom.
I think we had a lot of people over on the Inside Texas message board. Not a lot of people, but there was one in particular who, after the playoff run Notre Dame made, and after the run Jaden Greathouse made, so go get Jaden Greathouse. Okay, you maybe you do the talking to his intermediaries thing, like all college football players have intermediaries, but his team just played for the national title too. His team is good too. He's already wide receiver 1 somewhere. And you've also got Ryan Wingo at home, who's got a similar skill set. I'm not going to say Greathouse didn't have a great playoff, because he did have a great playoff. But and as much as I'd like to say you can't just go shopping, you can't just always go shopping, I guess to say.
The problem with Greathouse is that he doesn't want to leave.
Yes, that's the point.
If Jaden was open to other places, because for whatever reason,
if he was in the portal at all, you would talk to him, but he's not.
No. Jaden's exactly where he's wanted to be for the last 4 years.
Let me throw something else out there for people. We're about to enter a TV revenue sharing deal that teams will primarily use to pay their players, right?
Yes.
Notre Dame has a solo deal with NBC and a side deal with ESPN. They're going to have a lot of money, and then Notre Dame has always been willing to spend,
above table.
The other way.
Yeah, above table.
No.
Notre Dame doesn't. No.
Yes, they absolutely.
Lou Holtz is not waggling through that door.
Okay,
I can tell you exactly what they were doing.
Well, Charlie Weiss and Jimmy Clausen they were throwing anything at that kid. He was the number 1 player in the country.
Okay.
I've
I
heard
think that Ian's right. There's the potential there. They've got the money stashed in the bank account. If they want to disperse it, they can. But you talk to some people close to Notre Dame that cover them, and they don't spend like you think they spend.
They do spend, though. They do spend. They've always spent. I've heard how they did it. But So they'll have that, but the TV revenue thing, they've always been like a top 15 recruiting power, but not like top 5. Like
Because of
they're
the prerequisite to get into school. They can only recruit a certain kid.
yeah. But now that the TV thing,
They've had the TV thing for 20 years with NBC.
not that they weren't spending it on the players.
I see what you mean. And another point to that is the playoff share of 14 million. They don't have to split that with a conference. That goes all into their coffers.
Either way, the SEC and the Big Ten are getting 80% of the revenue anyway. So their salary caps and their conference are going to be higher than what the other conferences can do.
So Notre Dame is going to be they're not going to be a second run power. This new Marcus Freeman, we play for the national championship. This is how it's going to be now.
I agree.
And I think one misconception on this house settlement is that it's 22 million. It's 20-ish% of the revenue you make from TV deals. I think maybe it's overall, but TV deals go into revenue. So if you have more, that means your 22% is bigger in volume than other people's.
Yeah.
So okay, I see the vision here now, and that's why Notre Dame is going to fight tooth and nail to remain independent for as long as it possibly can, especially if it has a.
I love the people that claim, "Hey, Notre Dame needs to get in a conference." No, they don't.
Nobody at Notre Dame who has any say in things thinks that. As long as NBC Universal is going ahead and
global brand.
Yeah. Trying to think of we got I think one more good one, two more good ones. Victor Santiago, basically Ohio State bought a national championship. Is this the trend now?
I wouldn't say that.
They paid to retain their players, so
they developed a lot of those guys.
Carnell Tate, Donovan Jackson, Brandon Innis, Emeka Egbuka, Travion Henderson, their linebacker core,
Cody Simon,
Tuimoloau. They paid those players to stay. That's guys they brought in, retained. Maybe they sweetened the deal in the recruiting.
Cut a big check for Caleb Downs.
But they got Caleb Downs, and Drew noted earlier they didn't just Caleb Downs' coach left, and they had to win a tough battle against Georgia to get him.
Yeah, he wasn't cheap.
Quinshon Judkins they got, but those are players they sprinkled. Will Howard they got in to drive the bus like Keanu Reeves and speed. Joe,
the left tackle, the center, the quarterback, one of the running backs, one of the tight ends, and the star safety are all transfer guys. That's kind of a freaking lot of guys.
How many? Wait, so how many did you just count?
I just got to 6.
Okay, so there are 16 other players on a field.
Jeremiah Smith was not he was the top receiver.
I didn't say the receiver, the top running back, the top defender.
Oh, I thought you said top wide receiver.
But
okay.
That's 6, and there are 22 guys on a field.
There's 6 very important people. The quarterback of the defense and the literal quarterback of the offense and his left tackle and the guy snapping him the ball and the guy he turned and handed to and the guy blocking on the edge. That's a lot of people.
They were all significant additions.
Yeah.
I don't buy – look, here's the deal, though. There's never been a national championship team that wasn't built with the assistance of boosters in the history of the sport. So whatever.
Fair enough. Yeah, and it's also like what's your definition of bought? You know?
Yeah. Every team is bought now. You got to pay all these guys, so most of them.
Yeah, so be careful for investing in Oracle, although I've heard that's pretty popular these days, unless you really want to support Michigan football.
Hey, if you want to support Ohio State football, go team Lex Wexler.
It's funny how the three.
It's funny how Epstein has something to do with it. I think that's hilarious. Tyler freaked out when we mentioned that the other day.
You look at the Big Ten power circle, and it's like Oregon, Phil Knight, Michigan, the Oracle guy. Michigan State has a Ishiba, right?
Ishbia,
and then Ohio State has theirs. Ohio hopefully, and then I don't know if Dave Portnoy's a billionaire, but he's a public-facing figure supporting
What does
Michigan.
Penn State have?
Penn
Did
State.
they get any residuals from The Office?
I don't know who Penn State has. I
They
mean,
have a lot of these Big Ten teams have. Things are changing in America now, but I think a lot of those Big Ten teams probably have more moneyed alumni than the Southern teams. They just don't spend on football the same way. They just don't care as
That's
much.
a great point.
they probably spend a lot more on basketball than you'd think. I mean, that's what Purdue's probably doing a little bit more of,
Or on politicians.
or Indiana. Although you're not
expanding
getting
their business.
Indiana, somehow the dynamic just flipped when you bring in Kirk Cignetti and live with Woodson. So also, like another thing about Penn State is, unless you want to count Pitt, which you can, but Penn State's the big dog in Pennsylvania as far as football goes.
They are in the 90s. Whenever Penn State, I think, moved to the Big Ten,
Yeah,
I think that asserted them, because in the 70s and up to mid 80s, Pitt was the school. And then Paterno won the national title. It was in 85, 86 over Miami. An ugly, ugly Penn State team that just happened to upset a very, very good Miami team with Vinny Testaverde and those guys. But before that, Pitt was the one that was running that area for 10, 15 years, and it was because they were keeping in-state kids in state. You kept Tony Dorsett in state. You kept Dan Marino in state. They tried to keep Jim Kelly, but he went to South Beach. Like, there was a lot of core, really good high school players in that region.
They also they're the big dog in the Mid-Atlantic, and the best players from Virginia often end up at Penn State too, because there's not a school in Virginia that can lock it down.
Back in the day, they signed the number one player. This was like 2005, 2006. The number one player in the country from Virginia Beach. His name was Derek Williams. It was Paterno, like, making one last push to try to grab some sort of relevance. And Derek Williams had offers from like every big school in the country, and he wound up picking Penn State, and he wound up having a decent career at Penn State. He didn't do much in the NFL, but they wound up that class. They got 3 or 4 like elite guys, and that was the only time I'd ever seen Penn State recruit above a top 20 class.
And they they dip into other places as well. Like what's his name? Aller's from Ohio. And they went and got him.
Well, they have to.
It's very much one thing that I've noticed, in that this is what made Alabama a dynasty for a long time, not just the Saban era. Like Birmingham, which is close enough to Tuscaloosa, you're about a 4-hour radius from everywhere.
Yeah,
Tennessee and Louisiana and Florida. So you have to recruit like state lines don't exist. And Penn State, even though it's smack dab in the middle of Pennsylvania, it also has to recruit like state lines don't exist. And one quick final fun fact: number 3 in the AP poll in 2005, Penn State.
Remember, they were
the
team. If Texas or USC were to lose that year, Penn State was going to be the team that probably slid into that national championship game and would have been obliterated by Texas or USC.
Instead, they won a thrilling Orange Bowl, I think, over Florida State. So, all right, one last one. Let's get out of here on Texas football. Kick returner, punt returner in the 2025 season.
Great question.
Punt returner, I think, is going to be DeAndre Moore.
Okay. Can we do somebody that somebody that catches the ball a little more consistently?
DeAndre Moore catches the football. It's going to be.
Moore was on kick return this year. He was the other guy by.
Yes, it's going to be DeAndre Moore. And going into the spring, does someone else take that spot? Who knows?
They dropped a lot of passes this year.
I guess I didn't see those.
Or the chat. I bet you the chat did.
Oh, let's see. Okay, so y'all commiserate on it.
The chat also said Texas choked away the entire 2024 season. So the chat's the chat.
I like Butler as an idea.
Aaron Butler's got some skills back there. They're going to have to figure that out. But I think DeAndre Moore is the safe pick. Okay, he's steady. He understands what he's doing back there. He's not going to pull a Reggie Hemphill Maps and not understand when you're supposed to fair catch the ball. If they find somebody like a Silas Bolden in the portal that can come in and make an immediate impact, buddy, Jeff Banks is going to jump all over that guy. But I think going into spring, DeAndre Moore is your kind of de facto guy that's been back there. He's steady. He can fair catch it half the time if he needs to, but he's not going to miss them. Michael Terry is not ready to return kicks or punts. Incredible athlete in high school, not that type of athlete in college.
Put Arch back there. Come on. Come on. He can do it.
Oh man, that's yeah.
Yeah, I think with kick return, you want someone who can. I kind of like a running back there, which is why I think Keelan was good at it, because you are reading blocks a little bit different. Punt return, I want someone with. I don't care about
Niblett. Now that's one that could do it.
Yeah, I don't care.
Niblett could do it.
I don't care about long speed with punt return. I want short area quickness, and I want acceleration. And if he gets tracked down from behind, oh well, you gain 70 yards.
Ryan Niblett is the guy. If he can do that.
What about Malik Muhammad?
Manny Muhammad?
I don't know if he's. I don't know. I don't see the.
He's not slow, but he's not fast. He's not quick, but he's not quick. Manny would be more to me like DeAndre, just kind of like a safe guy.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Niblett. I'm telling you, it's Ryan Niblett. Go watch that Joker in track. If he can just catch the ball, Ryan Niblett can go.
What about your Ricky Stewart?
No.
I don't trust his hands yet.
Yeah. Ricky, not yet. Or James Simon. Those guys, not yet.
Maybe Trey Wisner. Maybe he doesn't have to take on a lead back role and get some opportunities.
But he's not. He's safer than DeAndre Moore. I mean, if we're going the safer route, which I'm okay with, you're losing speed. You're losing that illusion, that quick twitch, quick go thing. Why don't we wait and see is the best answer in the world.
Oh, man, what's the fun in that? Especially we can put Arch Manning back there. So I think with that, we've got about 80 minutes of good talk. Appreciate everybody for joining in. Didn't even get to much Junior Day stuff, but if you want Junior Day info, you got to head to InsideTexas.com. We'll have full coverage on Saturday of all the players coming into town, loads of 2026 guys and some 2027 prospects as well. We'll have some stuff on here as well, some video updates. So make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for joining us. Ian, Justin, thank you. And we'll see you next time on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com.